hard to capture, extravagant, resurrect the track and it's militant. And I react like a convict and start killing. It's manifesting. The gods work like appliances, dealing in my psyche.
Yo, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explained here, bringing you guys another discussion for Boruto Naruto Next Generations, the manga. And for anime only fans, this is the time of the month where a lot of the content that we have on the channel is going to be spoiler heavy, so I thank you for your support. However, if you're still here, I'm assuming that you guys are caught up with the manga and you guys don't care about me talking about spoilers. So I think right now we need to have a serious conversation about whether or not Code, this person whose latent potential is now confirmed to actually be stronger than Jigen, whether or not Code at some point is going to have his latent potential unlocked by Amado releasing those limiters. And what I want to do is I want to take a stance on this that I haven't actually taken and actually considered at this point, which is I'm on record saying that I think that Code needs to fight against Naruto first and lose, and then he needs to get those limiters taken off. But I want to take things a step further as well. I know a few people are upset over the fact that Code gets this built-in power up to where once they're able to torture Amado and Amado's able to actually get those limiters removed, that Code is going to be the big bad guy that's going to go up and above and beyond and be past everything we saw with Jigen. People saying, well, what's the point in depowering Naruto and Sasuke if you're going to actually do that? And so I want to actually address that from this angle right here. So I think the first thing you need to look at is by having Code go up against Naruto first, I think that you get to show two things. I think the first thing you get to show is that number one, you get to show how powerful Naruto is without Kurama. The other thing you get to show is the fact that yes, Amado said in the most recent chapter that yeah, I think that Naruto can actually be killed off if he fights against Code, but he also said he wasn't actually sure. And the thing we know about Naruto is that Naruto has such a unorthodox fighting style. However, on the other side of that, you have Code who has Ada, and the reason why I think that that's so important is Ada is able to see everything that happened in her life and everything that happened all around the world at the same time, but everything that happened in her life up to a point where she's born, which means that depending on what her actual age is, Ada's actually able to go back and watch some of Naruto's battles. And the reason why that's so important is depending on how old you think Ada is, she's actually able to go back and see a pretty significant amount of Naruto's battles before he became Hokage. Now, the reason why I say this is Boruto right now in the actual story takes place 16 years after the 4th Great Ninja Wars. So to make this plain and simple, Boruto's birthday is on March 27th of the calendar year, and then you have the versus Momoshiki arc, and then later on that year in October of the same calendar year you have the Vessel arc that takes place, which happens on the 16-year anniversary of the 4th Great Ninja War. Boruto does not turn 13 until the next calendar year. It's important to understand that information because of this reason right here. So if we're in a situation where myself and a few other people who believe that Ada is of the legal drinking age in Japan, which is 20 years old, that means that Ada would have been able to not only see the entire war arc, but she also would have been able to see the events of part 1 of Naruto, which is why I think a lot of that stuff actually links up right there. She would have been able to see a significant amount of the events of part 1 of Naruto, which means that she would have a lot of information. She'd be able to see all of Naruto's progress, all of those battles that actually took place right there. And when you have a large quantity of data to actually pull from, which is so fitting given what the actual pun on Ada's name is, Ada Lovelace. I think that once you look at that, I think that that's going to be huge when it comes to how Code actually approaches Naruto. When you have that knowledge, when you have that information, when you have a large sample size to actually go off of, now all of a sudden you have the opportunity to actually start coming up with a strategy to actually fight against Naruto. Now that's not to say, oh my god, if you give Code all this information, he's absolutely going to dog walk Naruto. That's not exactly the case, because everybody that's fought against Naruto, they've all learned at some point during that fight. Expect the unexpected with the character of Naruto, and I would also challenge and remind you that having intel on how a shinobi's jutsu works doesn't always mean that you're going to get the victory. A great example of this is the fact that Naruto literally had a walking cheat book in Katsuyu. Katsuyu gave him all the information on what each of the individual pains were using and was walking through what each of their individual weaknesses were. Like, oh yeah, the Preta path, you can't let them absorb your chakra. Oh, the human path, that one can actually rip out your soul. Oh, the Deva path, he's got a 5-second interval. Naruto's getting force fed all that information, and he's still almost lost that actual fight. Technically, he lost the fight. Hinata and Minato had to jump in and give this dude extra life bars in order for him to actually take out pain. So having intel doesn't necessarily mean that Code's gonna dog walk Naruto, and I think that Code needs to get discouraged. I think he needs to lose fighting against Naruto, know that the information that Ada gave him, while that makes him a more dangerous fighter, he still isn't able to actually close the gap and overcome him. And the reason why that's so important is Boruto as a series has been playing with this theme of where does science fit in with the actual way of the shinobi? Where does it fit? Is it more important to be a shinobi that through hard work and training and diligence and figuring out what your actual ninjutsu is that more important, or is it about using science to cut corners and acquire power? That's always been a core conflict and theme in the Boruto franchise, and you see it in the character of Code. Code was just a normal person that ended up getting kidnapped by Jigen and Amado. He had the coma still implanted on him, and then after the fact, Amado, just like with all the other car members, Amado scientifically enhanced and altered Code's body, so that's not actual power that Code trained to attain. And there's something to be said about going through the vigorous training and the hard work to actually hone the actual jutsu you're using, acquire the power that you have, and truly have mind, body, and spirit working as one together. Even if Code had those enhancements put on him and he worked to actually master using them, that's not the same as actually developing your own jutsu. That's not the same as actually going through those trials and tribulations. And I think that that's where Naruto has that edge right there, is the fact that when it comes to his body, he's going to know his limits a lot better than Code's actually going to know them. And because Naruto's the one that created a lot of the jutsu that he's using, even if they're just variations of jutsu that other people made, Naruto understands those intricacies of those attacks a lot better, and Naruto's more creative in battle. I think that that's where you have the actual edge right there, and I think that using that as a way to actually push him to have his limiters taken off, I think that that's how you actually approach something of that manner right there. And honestly, there's something to be said about the fact that you have a delayed gratification when it comes to the actual antagonist, because one of the problems that Boruto's mangas had for a very long time is the fact that the manga is more of a snapshot. You don't really have any meat to the actual villains. They are pretty bland, and what you've seen since Kishimoto's taken over is that Kishimoto has made Ikimoto draw more in the moment and actually liven things up a little bit by actually fleshing out the characters. And the character Ada, you're seeing more of her actual personality, you're getting more of her motives. With the other car members, if you just look at the actual manga, they're flat characters with no substance to them. At least with the anime, what the anime's done is the anime's added extra layers to them. But to be fair though, the anime should not have to actually bend over backwards and jump through as many loops and circles and hurdles as it's having to do for these characters. And a great example is what they've actually done with some of the car members who were absolute trash and boring in the manga. Victor had a whole character arc. The same thing's going on with Boro. You're getting more layers to the actual character. They didn't have any real drive in the actual manga at this point. And even with Kashin Koji, the anime's adding extra layers to make a character. In the case of Koji, that was already a half decent character, now he's more interesting. In the case of Code, even the guys that ran the Shonen Jump podcast, even they said if it wasn't for the anime, they wouldn't have cared for the character of Code. They're not alone in that, because he had no development in the manga. There's something to be said about the fact that now all of a sudden he has to struggle a little bit, that you have delayed delayed gratification that he goes up against Naruto, and because Naruto embodies the old way of the shinobi, that Naruto ends up being the one that defies all science and logic. Something that Amado has not calculated for is the fact that Naruto is a very unorthodox fighter. I think that having Naruto be the one that comes out on top in that encounter, and you actually have delayed gratification to where Code has to retreat, Code has to get those limiters taken off, and then actually master some of that power, all while continuing to play with the theme of where science fits into this, because you have the character of Kawaki who would watch Naruto struggle to come out on top against the character of Code. And the reason why that's important is that Kawaki's being offered via science a way to actually reclaim the power of the Karma Seal, which Kawaki's been told will give him the overwhelming power needed to defeat Code and protect Naruto. You're watching as Kawaki is struggling against accepting the way of the shinobi, of going through the basics of chakra control, of molding your body through hard work, everything that's made Naruto as powerful as he is. For Kawaki to see that despite all that hard work and training that Naruto's done, it's ultimately left him in a vulnerable place, and that Kawaki can acquire a shortcut, a quick and easy route towards acquiring that power. I think that that's how you can actually play with this. Now you start seeing character arcs for not just Kawaki, but also Code as well. I think that that is something that works in that aspect right there, because it gives us more time with these actual villains and allows them to actually generate more heat, because outside of a few flex moments that Ishiki Osusuki did, Ishiki didn't really have any real substance to him. Most of what we know about Ishiki is stuff that we've kind of headcanon ourselves, like, oh, Kaguya, and I'm guilty of this. Kaguya, well, she betrayed Ishiki because she had her children, and they might have been betrothed. Turns out she was just the guy's subordinate, but there was no real substance on why she actually betrayed the guy. All Ishiki did was the guy flexed on Naruto and Sasuke, drank a couple bottles of wine while he did so, and we all said, Ishiki, we're pregnant. That was pretty much it at that point, but there was no real substance to him. There was no real why outside of, yeah, I just want to harvest the actual planet. There was no real meat to it. There was no real personality to him outside of he's just very, very powerful. I think that this gives you a chance to actually stay in the moment more. You actually get to flesh out Ada more. You see more of that manipulative personality. You learn more of why she's wanting to actually go at Amado, more about that actual relationship. By keeping Code around as long as you are, you're getting more information about the dynamic between Code and Kawaki. You're seeing the actual stuff that the animes mentioned in passing. You're actually seeing it via the flashbacks. You're seeing it potentially via the interactions. There's a lot there to where you can actually start driving the conflict. And so I think that's ultimately why Code does get his limiters taken off. But I think that you can actually pay this off by having Code be the representation of basically Naruto, Boruto Next Generations' whole entire theme, which is, where does science fit in this world of shinobi? Is the shinobi way of living dead? Is the shinobi way of trial and error, is that something of the past? Do we just go straight forward with scientific enhancements and scientific improvements, or is there a common balance right there? I think that potentially having Code being taken out by somebody that embraces both aspects of science and ninjutsu, something that Sasuke's talked about in the Sasuke Shinden, the Teacher Star Pupil novel, which I'm going to resume covering next month on the channel. Maybe that's something you actually start setting the stage for right there. However, I want to know from you guys, how do you guys feel about that? And what do you guys think about this possibility that you kind of keep Code around for a little bit to address the Boruto villain problem in the manga and use him in this manner to where, yes, he's going to get more powerful, but look at the means and how you acquire power. Do you think that's an actual trade-off to just the way the shinobi and what hard work and guts can actually personify? Let me know down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Have an awesome day, guys.